What is up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Really fun episode with you guys today that I want to get into. And I want to just get a little bit personal here. So if you know my story, I was raised by a single parent in a small town. And that story has always kind of been a minor chip on my shoulder. And ironically, it didn't come a chip on my shoulder until I, quote unquote, made it out. Did something different than what the norm is where I'm from. And it's not to downgrade anything that happens there or upgrade anything that I've done, but I know that for a lot of us and a lot of you listening, that's the story of like trying to level up, trying to get in, trying to make something better of yourself for you, your family member. And if you're a single parent or you're raised by a single parent, you know this, somebody who's trying to get deeper and more passionate and grow their businesses for somebody else. And so I wanted to have an episode where we talked about Pinterest, of course, and give some practical takeaways, some methodologies for dealing with Pinterest. But at the same time, I wanted to have somebody on. When I found Sharee Davenport, she just has an incredible story. She's a single mom. She's a badass. She's awesome. And so we're kind of bridging a little bit of that together with Sharee, and she's really passionate about it. And I thought that what she shared was magical, both in everything about being a parent and running a business and going full time in a very safe way, and also to being a badass at Pinterest with over 80,000 monthly viewers. So without any further ado, here's my good friend Sharee Davenport. Sharee, how's it going?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be here. I kind of wish we're recording this at the beginning of the summer in June, and you're in Colorado, right?
Yes.
I kind of wish I was in Colorado.
I don't know if you wish you were in Colorado. It was 97 degrees yesterday, and then it was just 60 degrees and dumped rain, and now the sun's out again.
What in the world? I felt like Colorado would be cooler, in some places. I mean, I just assume, I think like snow. I think like North Face ads when I think of Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you are. But is it hot where you are?
Yeah, in DC. I mean, DC's a swamp in general. Built on swampland, and then it's so it's like I grew up on the East Coast, and it was always hot in the summer, but I was closer to ocean air, and now it's just. You walk into the humidity. Like when you open the door, you just feel it. And you're like, all your pores are closed. You're sweating. And yeah, man, it's just not a good environment for fat bearded dudes, honestly.
I shot a wedding in South Carolina once and wore boots. And I felt like I was walking around in Jell-O and I was so sweaty. And like my boots were just full of water sweat. It was, it was so nasty.
Oh, I love this. Like everybody just turned this off other than that one person that's like, no, tell me more sweaty stories.
We like this. Yeah, the humidity here has been like 20 to 30%, and it feels disgusting because it's so dry here all the time. But I know that like southeast states are at like 100%. Can't do it.
Yeah, you're just walking into hot water, basically. Ugh. I love it. Well, cool. I'm really excited to have you on. I feel like over this year, I've always tried to keep an ear out or an eye out for folks that are like really niching into something awesome, and then like it's one thing to niche and be good at something and then regurgitate it in like a really fun and applicable way. And so for you, like obviously that thing is Pinterest, which like. As a guy who, I'm just going to openly say this, sucks at Pinterest, and we do not do enough on it. And I looked at our monthly viewers together today. I was like, oh, Adam, and we have some stuff on there. We have 3,000 monthly viewers, which
there you go.
To me doesn't seem that good, because I look at Sharee's and it's 70 something thousand viewers,
and that's low for me right now.
Oh,
but I mean, it's definitely a typical guy thing not to have all of this time on Pinterest. Yeah. Like you don't need hair and makeup ideas or, home decor inspiration. Clearly, your house is decorated beautifully.
Thank you. This is my one office, so this is the only place I'm in charge of decorating. So
that's amazing. I've got my shelf of Amazon packages, and that's my like ability for home decor, anyways.
I love it. And the llama back there, or the alpaca.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I'm my favorite book is Your Mama a Llama? So
love that one.
That's awesome. So yeah, tell me, give me the background on yourself. We already talked about being in Colorado, but you're also a wedding photographer full time, right?
I am.
So like, how does it all work for you?
So I left my corporate job 2 years ago, and that's how long I've been doing this full time. But really, before I left my corporate job, I was already working a full-time wedding schedule for 2 years. And then I actually have been shooting weddings since 2010. So make me feel old a little bit, but I am officially at the decade mark in my business, and definitely did it, slow and wrong and weird for a long time, just trying to learn the ropes. And then, Pinterest was that like pivoting point for me where I got the hang of it enough to like leave corporate America and just do this and only this. So it's been awesome.
That's awesome. I feel like Slow, Wrong, and Weird is like the name of if we had a band, that'd be the name of our album.
Yes, it's our boy band.
Yeah. That's super cool. What, do you have experience in marketing and like communications and social media and stuff like that from corporate? Or did you just, get attached to Pinterest and social?
I just got attached because I learned that was the cheapest avenue to use for marketing. And I was all about like being frugal and not putting money into things like The Knot and Wedding Wire, even though I did like try those things at certain points in my business. It was mostly just, okay, well, these are free marketing platforms. But my corporate job was actually working for Apple doing like tech support on the phone. So I was that person that picked up and was like, this is how you turn it off and on. And yes, I know you hate this update, but you just got to roll with it.
I didn't realize that. So I used to be a specialist in an Apple store back in 2008.
Oh, no way.
So, back in the day.
You understand the fun times at Apple.
Oh, totally. Well, I always, eventually I got promoted when they found out, that I was like a big fan and I was, a good employee. And I got like, there was this position between specialist and creative. And it basically was me doing all of the first level workshops and classes.
Nice.
And so I'd basically just be teaching old ladies how to use Safari.
Yeah. Or like iPhoto. The old people love iPhoto.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, sometimes it wouldn't even be that, though. They'd come in for that, and they'd be like, I just, you felt bad because, Apple stores are busy, and it's because overall things are good, but they'd come in and they'd be like, I just want to know how to FaceTime. I'm like, girl, I got you. Okay.
This is how you do. Meet your grandchildren, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Hilda, I got you. So that's really, really cool. Okay, so I had some experience talking to people, some customer service,
yes,
and then the Pinterest thing. And before we get into, kind of the practical applications for photographers who are like, what do I do in Pinterest? One, we're big fans of free lead generation ideas here at Here to Talk. Like, I'm a huge fan. Like, one of our workshops in our Facebook group is just all about building like a referral network without ads. And like, I like Facebook ads, and there are people like Max Sadiq who are incredible at it.
Yes, I love Max.
yeah, like good people. And then, I think too, in different towns, supposedly, obviously, like, there are a lot more photographers than there ever were, but people, there was a time when I bet the Knot and Wedding Wire having a listing there, like a paid one, was probably fine, or if it gave you 2 or 3 weddings, that might be worth it for you or whatever.
Right.
But I was all about, similar to you, like running lean, being frugal, like not going too crazy on spending. And so, like, for me, something I loved about downloading your PDF, your guide for Pinterest, was you kind of talked about SEO, which is like something I'm very passionate about. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is just another Google, essentially. Like, okay, that makes sense. But before we get into all that fun stuff, because I know people their mouths are watering, something I always talk about in my story is I was raised by a single mom.
Yes.
And you are a single mom, single badass mom. As much as you feel comfortable sharing, like, what's that like? Just you're running a business. You said you've photographed weddings since 2010. Mm-hmm. Your kid is less than 10 years old, so I'm going to do some math, right? So, like, how's that been? What's that like? And obviously this is a big question.
Yeah.
And like, any tips for fellow single parents out there?
Absolutely. So being a single mom is a huge part of my story as a business owner because I'm going to out myself here. I had him very young. I actually graduated high school in 2010, and he was born in 2011. So I was a single teen mom, like from day one, doing it by myself. And I had like just started my photography business, but more as like a hobbyist. I was one of those people that people cringe at, like in Facebook groups. I'll do it for $50 for 4 hours. Like, let's do it. Like, you get your photos on a CD, you know, just anything I could do to like do what I was passionate about. But I also understood that, like, as a single parent, I need a solid income to raise my child. So my personal rule for myself was like, okay, well, I'm going to get like a corporate job in whatever I can that pays well. And I'm not going to leave that corporate job until my income is the income of two parents. Cause I never wanted to like sacrifice his livelihood and like our livelihood together, working on like my business, making basically minimum wage, and then not having the things that we needed to like have a positive livelihood. So I like pushed myself really hard, worked a full-time corporate day job, full-time night job, and was doing weddings on the weekend. So caffeine constantly flowing through my veins, and just, you know, trying to build up enough comfort of a safety net to actually feel comfortable to leave that job for the sake of him. So when I finally got there, it was like a huge relief, because throughout the years, you know, you see people a lot online. They're like, you know, just leap. Like, just take the leap and just go into your business. And as a single mom, I'm like, look, you telling me to like leap off of this mountain means that I'm pushing my son off of it with me if things don't go well. And I just can't do that, you know? So when I finally did leave, like my business income was double my corporate income. And the year that I quit my corporate job, I was able to sell my townhouse, buy a house, open a studio, pay off my car. All of my student debt was gone, no credit card debt. Like, I was super strict with myself because it matters for him, you know?
But yeah, so it's like with, you know, struggling artists, you know, it's okay to be on your couch, or it's okay to, you know, be kind of winging it or figuring it out. But when you have a kid in the mix, like, the risk is so much higher, right? And I think too, you know, whenever it does happen, no matter whether you're an early parent or a late parent or whatever, like, you, whatever your vision is for being a parent, like, that started then, right? So you're like, that is now has to be, you know, considered in the pursuit of this other thing, you know, of running your own business or whatever. You know, and so, yeah, you got to play your cards differently than other people. You know, I know, for me, at least in DC, my big thing was like, I wanted to make it just as a single guy in general, because DC's so expensive. And I was like, okay, I want to make sure it works. And I started dating the woman who would become my wife now. And like, I wanted to make it without her help, you know, and that was just a prideful kind of thing. But it was like, that way it would never stress her out, you know, or never be like, oh, Adam's trying this photography thing, you know, whatever. And we always joke about it now, though, because we'll still get emails from people, or like, you get the MLM message, right, from an old high school friend.
Hey, girl. Hey, hun. XOXOXO. I started this new business, and I think you would be really good at it. And I'm like, I put on makeup like once a month, so I don't know why you want me to sell mascara.
Yeah, exactly. And they're always like, the specific words they always say, at least to me, are like, you still doing that photography thing? I'm like, yeah, yes.
That thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be like, listen here, you know, at least in DC, like, we get up in, you know, the like the $250,000, $500,000 a year in revenue kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, still doing that thing. We bought a house, people, you know, right? Like, you bought a house as well. Like, oh, you want to offer me a chance to sell some mascara? Or for me, I feel like I always get, it's always like the medicinal or the herbal kind of stuff. And just like, and they tell me how much I could make. And I'm like, guys, like, no, like, I'm not trying to be prideful, but no thanks. I know. Yeah, that's, I love that. But yeah, so it's like, you could do that if you were single or like didn't have a child, but I love that you kind of took that, what we call here, like the overlapping method, to where you wanted to wait until you're probably working your face off, right? You're working corporate and your business, but it's the idea, then it's easier to let go of the corporate. That's what people don't realize. Like, when you jump, it's terrifying.
Exactly.
And you were like, I need to make this a calculated step. So I'd rather work now while it's safe.
Exactly. Yeah. People were like, you can do it. Like your business is successful. You're shooting as many weddings as I am, this, and this. And I'm like, well, what about health insurance? And what about my 401k? And so I like set all these goals for myself. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to quit when I pay off my student loan. And then I went to school to be an elementary school teacher, funny enough. But then I got my IT job while I was in school for that. And I'm like, nope, this pays as much as it would to be a teacher. So obviously did not complete my my degree there. So then I was like, okay, well, my student loan is paid off, so I can do it. And then I was like, well, no, I guess I should probably wait until I pay off my car. But then I was like, I guess I should get a new car that's more reliable. So I got another car and I was like, it's going to be like 5 years before I pay off this car. And then it ended up, I paid it off in a year and a half. But like all of these things, I'm like, I want to wait until blank. And I'm the kind of person that just like needs that solid security net to feel comfortable leaning into something just because I'm a mom. And I think a lot of people that are parents have a hard time relating to these like Facebook communities that are like, just do it because you don't have to listen to the people that tell you to jump. Like take it at your own pace, set your own goals, and don't feel pressured. Because if I would have quit my corporate job when everyone was like, just take the leap, then my business wouldn't be nearly as successful as it is now. I'd probably be burnt out and I might not even be doing this anymore. Like I waited until I was comfortable having a business full time and also establishing like a work-life balance instead of struggling for 10 extra years because I left my cushy corporate job too early.
Totally. I think that's super wise. I feel like my whole mindset is that like anybody can go full time, but everybody's going to do it in a different way. And like you have to, like, you want to do it well. You want to do it so that it'll last, And I think for me, I'm like, I had a few years of, a recipe for burnout, if you will. But at the same time, my goal was work-life balance, or like, I had certain goals that eventually I would get to. And I was like, okay, cool. And then now it like, even with COVID and everything like that, we're definitely busy. Like we're just managing. It feels like so much more mental calculus that we have to do.
Yes.
And it's like we also have to be part PR person now. We have to be part marketing, what feels right, and there's things going on in the world that are valid, and that matter, of course. But but it's like, how do we go about that? And then like just rescheduling everything. But other than that, it feels good. It feels like easy now, but it's like you almost have to tell people like it won't feel like this at the beginning, but you have to work and then it will, I promise,
Yeah. It's funny because if this COVID pandemic had happened, even 5 years ago in my business, I would be so like just petrified and like not know how to handle it, not know how to communicate with people. And I'd be worried about like the future of my business. And like, yes, it's still scary. It's scary for everyone, but I just feel so lucky that I'm like in the place in my business that I'm in now because I feel comfortable like leaning into the uncomfortable conversations and I'm not scared about the future of my business.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just out of curiosity, as somebody who's like really big into goals, like now that you're kind of at this next level, what are some of do you have any current like business goals or financial goals? I know for us last year, my goal was like, I want to get a year of income in the bank and start retirement stuff. What have been kind of some of your goals to go about? Yeah,
so my goals have always been very like business and financial oriented. And this year I feel like I'm kind of leaning into the more personal goals of like having more time with my child, even if it means sacrificing some of my income. But I started a 401k and a SEP IRA. And so I've got like my retirement funds running. This is going to make me sound crazy. But my plan is to have enough money to retire when I'm 35. But obviously I want to keep working. I just want to have enough money in the bank to be able to do that. I'd like to pay off my house early, but I just bought it last year. So I don't know, I don't have a number goal for that one yet, but I just want to be comfortable. I never want him to feel the stress of like financial issues, and I want to be able to give that to him. So
no, totally. How did you say 35 like with a 3?
With a 3. I know I turned 28 in August this year, so
Okay, that's amazing. I love that. I felt like I was advantageous, like wanting to retire at 45, but I'm like 35. I'm like, damn, Sharee, like get it.
Right.
I'm in your corner. That is so amazing. Also, too, we've had 2 past episodes, one with a CPA and then one with a photographer who's just been investing for a long time. And the SEP IRA, man, everybody loves the SEP. Like,
they're awesome.
If you're not into it yet, guys, listening to it, and you're trying to figure out retirement, start a SEP. Like it helps so much.
Yeah.
With taxes and everything. Yeah. So let's get into Pinterest.
Yes. Sorry, we went down a rabbit hole a little bit.
No, goals and motherhood are not unworthy causes by any means. I wanted to bring that on there just because I know that aligns with my story and your story, and
I love that we have that in common because you get it. Like it's a different lifestyle to have a solo parent. So
totally, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things too, and I think for me, watching my mom, she was always. The way she communicated to me, she didn't communicate a lot of her stress to me. But you could tell what was up, or like, hey, we're going to do pizza night once a month instead of once a week, like your friends, or, whatever that is.
Right.
And for me, luckily, that just became the new normal. So my expectations were set. But it was like, I know for her, thinking about it in the past, I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, like this is tough. Like that had to be really challenging. So,
yeah.
But let's talk about Pinterest, man.
Yes.
Like, yeah, we talked about the 70 bazillion thousand monthly engagement, all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to ask you straight up. What is the number one thing, other than just not utilizing it, what is the number one thing you see photographers sucking at when it comes to Pinterest?
This is going to sound very blanket, but just doing it wrong. Like, especially not to like group us into our gender or whatever, but like women who have used Pinterest since we were, a lot of us like early 20s or teens, like we jump on there and we're like pin. Like, I like this tattoo. I like this hair and makeup. And so then people are like, oh, well, I guess it's good for photography. So they jump on there and they're like, I'm going to pin all of this pretty stuff. And I'm going to pin these cute outfits that I'm going to send to my clients. And that will inflate people's like monthly viewers. So they think they're doing it right. But then they're not generating any leads and they're like, well, I used Pinterest, but it didn't do anything. And so a lot of people just give up too early because the way that they use Pinterest as a consumer isn't working when they try to use it for their business. But that's normal, right? Because you shouldn't use something the same way as a consumer as you would for a business.
Yeah, totally. Wow, that makes so much sense. It's like people who are trying, and it's, I imagine the difference is so close, right? Like if they just did a few things differently, they'd be producing, but instead they're acting like they're consuming, but they get the same number maybe.
Right.
And they think they're doing it right, but like if you're not getting leads and making money off of it, then
it's a total waste of your time. Yeah. And we're so wrapped up in numbers, right? Because it's like, how many Instagram followers do you have? How many likes did you get on that photo? And, with Pinterest, it's not actually about the like monthly viewer number. Like you can inflate that if you jump on there and pin like 500 photos of a really popular tattoo idea. But if it's not actually generating like traffic to your website and leads, which is what we all need as photographers to make money, then it's a waste of your time.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So with that, what is one of those differences of how people are thinking about doing it wrong and doing it right? Like when it comes to, and let's just, for the sake of starting fresh, all that kind of stuff, like they've never had a Pinterest, we'll use that. Yeah. I also think I heard you in a podcast say like, just delete everything and start over. So we'll use it as a reference.
Yeah.
They have let's say they have one awesome wedding blog post and one awesome engagement blog post. Could be 2 different couples, whatever. And on my side, let's say their SEO is good. Let's say they've done the work on that side, keywords, alt tags, meta descriptions, all that stuff. How do they start on Pinterest? What is that first step for them once they've built their account and, they added their photo, built out the bio? Like, what do they do? Do they have a weddings board, a couples board, right? Because couples is like everything couples too. Like, What is Sharee's recipe for that, just starting out?
Yeah, my favorite thing to tell people is the scariest thing for them to hear, but it's to delete everything and start over. Like the best place to start is from zero on Pinterest. So, there's lots of strategies out there that you can read about, but honestly, when you're pinning, you should never be pinning something that doesn't take people back to your own website. So by starting over, you are only putting content on your Pinterest account that takes people to you. And that's the goal, right? Is you want them to land on your website. So I keep things super simple because I want it to be, the best return on my investment, which is $0, by the way, for Pinterest. I don't do ads or anything like that. And I also like time is an investment for me. And I want to spend the least amount of time to get the best results. And the way to do that is to only pin your own content to Pinterest from your website. Yeah. And get rid of everything else. Like you can keep your recipes, but like make them on a secret board. I've got secret boards that say like mission hot body and like healthy recipes that I'll never make. Like, all my public facing stuff is business related.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's awesome. So then starting fresh, what do they do? Should they start? How do you have your boards laid out? Is that what kind of a best place to start?
Yeah. So my boards are very simple. They're just based on my market and what I do. So I'm in Colorado. I've done the destination wedding thing before. I'm just not interested anymore. So my boards are Colorado wedding photographer, Colorado engagement photographer, and Colorado elopement photographer, because those are my main things that I market for. And that's it. Like all of my photos from my website go into those 3 different boards. I have also started a board of cornerstone content because a lot of people, it's mostly to be like, you're wrong. Because a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't use Pinterest unless you're creating these like 1,500 word blogs that say like what you should wear for your engagement session and this, and this. So I tested it and no, like that stuff works, but you can also just do what you've already done, which is take photos and blog them for your clients. And you can use that and build up just as much traffic, leads, and income without writing 1,500 words, which is something I don't like to do.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like the cornerstone content, especially on the SEO side, it's cool, and obviously I'm a big fan, but it's one of those things where, at least for that, once you do like 10 posts of something like that, then you're also done. So it's like, it's not one of those things where you have to like keep going crazy about it. What is how many, if you don't mind sharing, like I don't know if you track these, but like how many leads have you gotten from Pinterest, or like what's your average per month or per year? Like what's that look like?
Yeah, so when I first started using Pinterest, which was I'm like, what year is it now? It was in November of 17. Within 6 months, almost every single one of my leads was coming from Pinterest. So I actually stopped using all of the other platforms for marketing. So I would say now, like I still teeter around like 80% of my leads come from Pinterest and then like 70% of my bookings. But most of the ones that I don't book, it's just based on availability.
Wow. That's a crazy thing. I love that though. I love that like just going ham on something made it work for you. I love that.
Yeah. It was very unexpected, and I'm the kind of person that's always like, well, don't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? Do like a little bit of Facebook and a little bit of Instagram and a little bit of Pinterest, but then once I saw like 1, how easy Pinterest was, and 2, how free it was, because I like saving money, I just put everything into that because it was worth it.
Instagram just feels like hard to do right now. It feels like you're going into this big thing that is happening,
right? And
then but does Pinterest still like feel new and fresh to where you feel like, I guess all I'm saying is like on Instagram, sometimes it feels like you don't have a shot. Like you just don't feel like you have a shot. Whereas Pinterest, the way you talk to me, it feels like you have a chance.
Always.
Like it's still, there's still a place.
Well, and I feel like this pandemic is like scary of a thing it is to talk about. I don't want to like bring negative things into our conversation. Like with everything happening in the world, I feel like Instagram is this platform where people have always had to like show their face and like be really emotive and like really lean into the things going on in the world. And it becomes all about that. Well, there's so much heavy stuff going on right now that like
Yeah.
people are kind of staying off that platform. Whereas Pinterest, it's just a search engine. So even with everything going on in the world, somebody planning on a wedding might not like go through a bunch of Instagram stories when every other one is about something that's an uncomfortable topic for them, but they're still going to like go on Pinterest and make a board to like plan their wedding or transition their wedding into like an elopement, for example.
Yeah. Wow. No, that makes perfect sense. What about for photographers, when they're going to pin stuff, like do we use like the Pinterest plugin, like walk me through, like as if I'm an idiot, which I am, like walk me through pinning, like we talked about that crucial wedding post that we have, like what does that look like? And then
so it's so easy. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I love it. I love
caffeine.
it. Go for it. I love it. No, Sharee's ready. So I was just going to say, everything from, I know in SEO, you kind of have this like checklist mentally. So on Pinterest, like you're going to pin from this post that you really, really like, you think the photos are really good. You'd like to shoot more couples like this. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, if those things are things that we shouldn't consider, or if there are more. But yeah, what's that checklist when you're like, okay, here's my favorite photo. Let's start with that. And you go to pin it. Like, do you go to the website and then pin it through the Pinterest website? Do you use the plugin or the extension? Like, what's that look like?
So you can, as long as you're carrying the photo from your website to Pinterest, you can do it in any way. But the easiest way and the fastest way is to start with your blog post, because we all have these blogs. And then you can use the little Pinterest plugin, which is on WordPress and Squarespace. You click it and then you just save it to your board, or you can use Tailwind, which is what I use, because you can go through, queue up all of these pins, and then they publish on Pinterest in like a spaced apart way, so that it's consistent. But even then, when I started using Pinterest, I didn't have Tailwind. I use it now because it's more convenient, but my first probably 2,000 to 3,000 photos that I pinned was me going through and clicking pin it, and putting it on those different boards.
Wow. Hold up. So you have more than a few thousand photos on Pinterest?
Oh boy, let's take a look at how many times I've hit the button. I have a lot.
We're doing this live.
Ignore my dogs in the background. I'm so sorry, you guys.
It's all good. The bearded dog loves dogs. We're totally fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, I have, it should show me my numbers of how many I have on each board. Yeah, so I've got almost 2,000 photos on my elopement board, almost 7,000 on my wedding board, and almost 1,000 on my engagement board. So lots of photos.
My gosh. Wow. Okay, so that even clues me in a little bit to like, how much is too much, right? And you've been using it for about 3 years. So it's like, okay, yeah, like you can go crazy with it if you want.
Yeah. And people, I don't want people to get scared that they're like, oh, well, I don't even have that many photos that I've taken, so I can't do it. Keep in mind, I started using this in November of 17, and by January of 18, I had generated so much traffic and so many leads that I had already doubled my income from 2017 by the end of the first month of 2018. So and that was with a significantly smaller number of photos, obviously.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, walk me through, they've downloaded the plugin for WordPress and they're going to go pin it, right? There's some information that people want to pin in there. So one, does some things that translate over from SEO. So does file name of the photo matter? And then what do they fill out when they go to fill out the information? What does that look like on Pinterest?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that matters is your alt text. So file name and all of that is important for SEO. So you always want to check all your SEO boxes when you're blogging, which is a huge part of using Pinterest. Because I tell this to everyone, even though it's Pinterest that's doing the legwork, you have to blog properly for SEO for it to work properly on Pinterest, because Pinterest isn't Instagram, it's not Facebook, it's not social media, it's a search engine. So if you're pinning a photo of a couple and your photo of the couple is labeled Jack-Jill 123, your potential client isn't jumping on Pinterest and being like, okay, I need an engagement photographer, Jack-Jill 123, right? They have to be able to find you based on what they're typing in. So that's what your alt text is for. That's where you put in the phrases that people will use on Pinterest to find you and go to your website.
Okay, so you can, just to clarify for me, so if you already have alt text in there that, is hopefully good and will suffice, Pinterest pulls that into the description for the pin.
Automatically,
and you think,
yeah.
Is that pretty solid, or do you do any editing to that? Because I know alt text too, like for us, we don't really, usually I don't write them with like capitalization or anything like that. So like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So case sensitivity sucks. So this is why Pinterest is my favorite, because I don't have to write like a thought-provoking caption or like an individual sentence on each photo in the alt text for my SEO. And this is very controversial, especially with a lot of people that do SEO. You hear alt text and a lot of times people will be like, well, write like one short descriptive sentence to describe the photo. So people will take a photo, for example, of like a bride getting ready, and they'll write in bride putting on wedding dress, and that will be their alt text. But I use that just purely for convenience of Pinterest, since that's my primary marketing platform, for keywords, because it's a box of 500 characters where you can put in all of the phrases that people are using to look for you. So I'll put in, the name of the venue, the designer of the dress, my state, whether it's a wedding or elopement, and all of these phrases that relate to the photos, so that it's not irrelevant when it comes up in search results, but it comes up a lot more than it would if it just said bride putting on wedding dress.
Totally. Like we're giving it more chances to show up when somebody does search those things. So no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. I would literally, so I heard a past podcast you were on, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to start over. I'm going to go for it.
Yes.
And what I was doing though is my alt tags were pretty good on my photos, but I thought I had to kind of make it like a prettier sentence, and so I would like go reformat that. And I was like, man, this is a lot of work.
It takes so much time to do stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm like, I need to just blog even better and then like bring these over. Okay, so let's say, somebody's doing that, and obviously like we talked about, like wedding stuff goes to weddings, engagement stuff goes to engagements, elopements, etc. Is there other opportunities for Pinterest to maybe like, if you work at a venue, or for you, like a certain location often?
Yeah.
Is it a 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other to do like a venue specific board or location specific board? Or does, what do you think about that?
So I've tested those things out, especially when Pinterest came out with the feature to section your boards. So you could still have these like main umbrella boards. And then within that, you could be like, oh, well, here's all of my photos that were at, the Stanley Hotel or this art district in Denver or something. And I tested it, and it didn't make a difference in how much traffic it generated. So I don't do that. I literally just carry it all over in one
on 3 boards
mass thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just on your 3 boards. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I was kind of curious. Maybe too, and I like playing devil's advocate just for fun. But if that gave them more mental clarity for like managing it, you think you might be okay with that? And like, okay, yeah, we've got a Shirley Hotel board.
Exactly. Well, it's all about like any way that you choose to organize your Pinterest profile is purely for your own organization. It's not for the aesthetic, because Pinterest is one of those platforms where you don't actually want people to come to your Pinterest profile. Like when you see this ominous number that's like monthly viewers, that's not the number of people that are actually coming to your account and like clicking through your different boards like they would come to an Instagram profile. It's the number of people that typed in a phrase where your photo showed up in their search results. So you want them to click that photo and go to your website. So they should never actually be spending any time on your profile where they see like your boards and your sections. They should just be going from photo to website.
Right, unless they really, really like you or they find themselves seeing your stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
Right, exactly.
That's perfect. And I love the idea, too, like that monthly viewers isn't your profile. It's just when your photo shows up in search.
Exactly.
So that's good to know. Other stupid question for you.
I'm ready.
Landscape or portrait?
So everyone says vertical pins are better because they take up more space. It's true, they do take up more space, but it honestly doesn't matter. Do them both. Like, if you are blogging a blog and you're like, oh, well, my blog post is only going to have 30 photos because those were the only vertical ones that I had that fit, but you could take it to 50 to 80 if you added the horizontals, add those in and pin them always.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I think it's funny. Yeah, you always hear about the vertical pins, but I think at the end of the day, is it what the person's looking for?
Right.
Like that's the main thing.
People aren't going to be like, oh, I can't click on that one because it's not vertical.
Yeah. Be like, this one's like a movie instead of a hot dog. What is going on?
Exactly.
Yeah. That is so funny. Okay, so now we're diving even deeper into Pinterest. I love just like talking about all this stuff. So let's say you get going, and I looked at my stuff today just to give you real life examples. So, one of my pins is to a blog post I have that is like, more cornerstone content, like here's, tips on outfits or something like that for engagements. And one of my pins has a higher amount of viewers than a lot of other ones, which I'm like, okay, cool. It doesn't have many pins. It only has 2, but like it has, it's like it showed up like 1,000 times or something like that.
Yeah.
What does somebody do with that information? Do you go back and play with that pin? Do you play with that post? Do you think like, what do you do with that particular information?
Yeah. So if you have a pin that has a high number of impressions, which is that number you're talking about where people have seen it, but they've only saved it a couple of times, your goal is to like, so you understand, okay, people are interested in this, but your goal isn't to get them to pin it necessarily. It's to get them to click on it to lead through to your website. So obviously something about this photo or the keywords that you had associated with this photo did really well. So you take those phrases or you take photos that are similar and you share similar content. So like all of a sudden, all of my top pin impressions will be these like snowy, wintry engagement photos. And sometimes it will happen in like August. I'm like, well, it's not snowing right now. But there's people that are getting engaged and they're like, I want wintry engagement photos. So I'll go through and I'll share more photos from my winter engagement sessions. I'll like throw them up on the blog, pin them, and then those do better. So it's just about like following the trends of what people are saving and looking at.
Right. And in theory, the people who are looking for, what you already do, they're curious about everything that you do, right? So if they're into Colorado, snowy stuff, elopement stuff, outdoorsy people, people who like beer. I'm using a lot of stereotypes about, Colorado, but a lot of them are true, like in your work, right? So it's like, you kind of, now you've gotten a taste for what they want and you can give them more, essentially.
Exactly. That's it. I think that's another like really big mistake that people make when they're trying to use Pinterest is they get in their head about the things that they think they should be sharing because of what's ingrained in us from these other platforms. Like when I share on Instagram and Facebook, I'm trying to share those like breathtaking, like mountainous postcard type photos because that's what people look at and love. But on Pinterest, I share everything. And like my most popular photos are of like signs and venues and like first dances and like weird little side pictures that really, if I posted that photo by itself on Instagram, wouldn't do anything for me. Because Pinterest operates more like a search engine than a social media platform, which is why those impressions matter so much. I know this part of it gets like really dry, but that impressions number is just the number of times somebody has scrolled past a photo that shows up in their search result. And that's what you want because that's what takes your photos to the top of the search results for all of those keywords that are attached to them. So your goal is not pretty photos, it's traffic, right? So you just want to be seen as much as you can so that people start coming to your website.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And then diving even deeper, how are you tracking personally? Like, how does Sharee do this? Tracking when Pinterest is coming to your site? Like, one, obviously asking a couple where they found you. And then two, like, are you using like Google Analytics or Clicky or something like that to see?
All of it, yeah. So I'm an analytics junkie. I'm very like type A analytical. I like to see what's working so that I don't waste my time. Pinterest has an analytics section. So I use that strictly to make sure that the people that are coming to my website from Pinterest are in my target market, right? So that's my first analytics that I pay attention to is your audience insights. And I always want that number to say Colorado. And then I also use Google Sitekit on WordPress, which is just an easier to read form of Google Analytics mixed with Google Search Console. And then that tells me how many referrals from Pinterest, but also exactly where they're landing. So it says like they're going to this blog post, and then from there they clicked on this, and then from there they clicked on this, and so on. So that's what taught me, like, oh, okay, people used to come to these blog posts and then not click around a lot. So then I started adding call to actions that would carry them into other sections of my website. And then I also track it through my contact form. I say, that's standard, where did you hear about me? And more often than not, people will say, I found you when I was searching on Pinterest, or I found your Pinterest through Google Images, because with doing nothing for SEO, most of my photos show up towards the top of the search results on Google Images because they're showing it from Pinterest.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like if Google knows you're ranking high somewhere in general, I bet they want to hop on the train.
They kick you up higher. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. Give me an example of, if you don't mind, like one of your CTAs, right? So like one of your call to actions. So you have a blog post, right, of a pretty, snowy wedding in Colorado. What's your call to action to get them to go somewhere else and not have, that's too what people talk about in the SEO world, for people listening, like called bounce time, right? So it's like, what is the amount of time they spent on your site and then they just left, or did they go kind of look around a bit? So like, what's one of your tricks for helping people stay on?
So I am very wordy at the top of my blog post, but I know people will a lot of times scroll past that. So sometimes I'll put phrases like between photos that like describe a moment, and then always at the bottom, I'll say, usually my call to actions are really venue specific, because that was my first goal with Pinterest. Is I didn't just want to rank for Colorado wedding photographer. I wanted to rank for the names of all these places and venues, because that's where a lot of couples start when they're searching. So at the bottom, it'll say, do you want to see more photos from elopements that I photographed at Sapphire Point? Click here. Or if it's not venue specific, I'll say, see what it's like to work with me by checking out this page on my website. They're super dry, but they get people to move around.
Dude, I love that. That's super cool. It's smart, because like the more time people spend on your Pinterest profile, Instagram profile, your website, wherever, like if they're learning about you, they're already falling in love with you, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where your branding comes in. And also, this is un-Pinterest related, but adding a footer to my website was huge, because I didn't have that before. I had like all of my menu options and things that people could click on were towards the top. Well, people come to my website 90% of the time to a blog post, because they're coming from Pinterest. So when they scroll to the bottom of the blog post, my website used to just be over, except for that one little call to action. But now I've got that entire footer where it's like engagements, elopements, weddings, advice from a photographer, blah, 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 blah. And it's got like tons of buttons where people can go to different places.
I love that. That's super cool. Well, hey, tell me a little bit more about the Pinterest education that you do. And then can people hire you to do Pinterest for them, or do you strictly only educate? What's that look like?
Yeah, so I've started doing kind of all the things with Pinterest. I used to do just mentoring, just one-on-one, but then I realized that like we're all so busy, right? So I came out with the guide so that people can have something tangible to reference back when they're using Pinterest. So I still do my one-on-one mentoring for people that really are like, I have no idea how to blog. What's Pinterest? I've never used this before. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I have the guide for people that are like, I sort of have an idea of what's going on, but I could use like a little hand holding and like a guide to follow. And it's got a checklist, which makes it easier. And then for people that are just not interested in doing or learning because they don't have the time available, I do it for people. So I set up their entire Pinterest account. I do their first 5 blog posts, whether it's weddings, elopements, engagements, families, whatever.
Wow. Okay.
And then they get a copy of the guide with that, and then they can take it over from there. Or some people just have me do it for them consistently.
That's so cool. I love that. I've purchased the guide, so I'm a big fan, and I love it. I'm a big fan of education, obviously, and then just like, all it takes, and you can attest to this, is like you talked about, like paying off certain goals, providing for your family, making that cash. It's like all came from putting more effort in. Like all it took was time, and like we talked about, there was no money spent.
Exactly.
And only now have you kind of started implementing Tailwind, which even in the great scheme of things is like $10 to $30 a month, if that,
Exactly.
So it's like, and it's going to bring you in like $10 to $30 is not a big deal if it brings you in a $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 wedding, you know. So
exactly. Yeah, I honestly like used to be that person that posted on Instagram every single day, and now that pressure is off where like I'll share a sneak preview on Instagram after I photograph something, but sometimes I'll go weeks without sharing anything because I don't have to. And
yeah,
it just gives you a lot of time back, which is something that I think we all need more of as entrepreneurs. Like there's never enough hours in the day.
Preach it. I love it. Well, Sharee, where's the best place for people to go get access to that guide, even just see your site? I mean, we talked about your footer and blogs. Like, they want to go look at this stuff. So where's the best place where they can go get started and kind of dig in deep on Sharee Davenport?
Yeah, so my website is just my name because it's nice and unique. So it doesn't belong to anybody else, but it's just ShareeDavenport.com. And then for people that are interested in the mentoring or me doing it for them, it's just /mentoring. And then for people that want the guide, it's /the Pinterest guide with dashes in between the words.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, Sharee. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Man, so what a great episode from Sharee Davenport. Obviously, we talked about this at the beginning of the episode, but like my background as raised by a single parent, you know, and in a small town, Sharee resonated with that. And I knew out of all the Pinterest experts, I wanted to talk to somebody who resonated with the idea of being the normal person, you know, not the photographer we know with a master's degree. That there's nothing wrong with that, but like, what about, you know, the person who they know that they need to have their effort beat their connections or beat their lifestyle? And Sharee is one of those people. So I would encourage you to check her out. Her Pinterest stuff is amazing. I've never understood it as well as I have after taking Sharee's guide to heart. So really, really cool. Love you guys. Come hang out in the Facebook group, togfb.com, for all of our free workshops and resources. Would love to see you guys there. Have a wonderful day, guys. Keep being awesome.